We're ready when you are, Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, you get it all. Email.
Hello, council. Are we ready to go?
Ready.
Okay. All right. I'm going to call this Lafayette City Council meeting of Thursday, February 11th, 2021 to order. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's have a roll call, please.
Mayor Witherspoon,
Here.
President Brungart,
Here.
Councilor Drebin,
Here.
Councilor Gilgan,
Here.
Councilor Newman,
Here.
and Councilor Paulson.
Here.
Okay, all 6 councilors are present, Your Honor.
Fantastic. All right, we would like to have a report from the Yamhill County Sheriff's Office at this time.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Deputy Andrew McMahon with the Sheriff's Office. If you don't know me, I want to go over the crime statistics for January 2021 as compared to the previous year. So I'm pleased to say that most all categories are in decrease of the previous year, with the exception of we did have 1 case of stolen property. So I'm just going to go down the list on what we had. We had 1 case involving theft. We had 1 case in the other category. We had a simple assault, stolen property, like I mentioned. We had 1 case involving vandalism, which is down from the previous year. We had 2 previous year. We had 4 other category reports and 1 non-reportable offense. Overall, it was down by minus 78.72%. Is there any questions, concerns, comments from the council? Anything I can answer?
Just to clarify, when the numbers we just looked at are compared to the first column is the previous month, correct?
So the previous year.
Of the previous year, so January of last year versus January of this year.
Correct, but it's month to month.
Correct.
Yes, okay, thank you. Well, congratulations. I think it's fantastic that the numbers are down.
you.
Obviously, you're doing a fantastic job, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Council, any other comments or questions on that? Okay, thank you, guys. Keep up the good work. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. Presentation of the fiscal year 2020 audit by Ryan Pasquarella. If I said that correctly. Okay, Mr. Pasquarella, could you
Hi,
share with us,
Ryan.
please?
Hi, Preston. How are you?
Great.
This is the first time I've done this presentation from my house. So definitely a different situation than coming and visiting you like I normally get the opportunity to do. But thank you for having me here this evening. So my name is Ryan Pasquarella. I work for Grove, Mueller and Swank. We are a CPA firm out of Salem. Our firm does quite a bit of governmental auditing work. We've got clients up and down the I-5 corridor for the most part. We try to stay between Portland and Eugene, but we spend a good portion of our year as a CPA firm out visiting clients and performing audits. This year, not quite as much visiting happened that has historically happened, but for your city, we were on site for a few days, and the way that the audit was performed was pretty similar to prior years as far as us coming and looking at your documentation. We had some clients, but it was all remote. They scanned every single piece of document that we wanted to look at, then emailed it to us. Not sure that is really an effective way of doing it, but definitely a different year. So I have 3 things that I want to talk about this evening. And really 2 of them are in your council packets. One of them is called our governance letter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here and show you what I'm looking at. And that way you can kind of follow along with what you have for the documentation, or you can just watch it on screen. So the first thing is the governance letter, and it is it's about a 3-page letter. It's on our letterhead, and then there's an attachment behind it, which makes this document a little bit longer. I'm assuming that you can see the governance letter. Let me check that before I start talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Okay. So what this governance letter is, it's a required communication between my firm and the city council, kind of just giving a basic outline of the responsibilities of the audit, what we do as auditors, and then just some of the things you need to think about as it relates to the financial statements that were completed. So what I wanted to talk about on this first page here, it talks about our responsibility as auditors. Basically, what an audit is, it is to provide reasonable assurance that there are no material errors in the financial statements. We do not give 100% absolute assurance over the numbers in the financial statements, because if we did that, we would have to look at every single transaction that happened for the year, and you don't want to pay me to do that. So professional standards have a sample your transactions, definitely looking at the larger transactions, but with the smaller ones, more of a random sampling. So we give reasonable assurance over the financial statements. It also says in here that we look at the city's internal control processes. So part of what we do is we sit down with city staff and we understand how bills are paid, how you're collecting money, how you're recording your payroll, and really who has their fingers in the financial, in the accounting software. So we go through that. We don't do a lot of testing. We more are doing walkthroughs and looking at your documentation and looking at how it's being recorded in the system to make sure that we're comfortable that you can get accurate information out of your process. And so that is something we are required to do annually. And if we had any significant issues that we wanted to talk about related to that, there would be a separate letter issued saying, hey, you probably aren't doing this process as well as you could. Try these recommendations and fix it. That has happened with your city in the past, but it's been a little while. I think that, you've kind of adapted what we've wanted for changes for internal controls over the years. And so now we don't really issue a letter because we kind of told you before what we would like you to do and you're doing it. So the main thing is that there's consistency in what is being done by the, in the processes, so that every transaction is treated the same way. And that's ultimately, on management. That is page 1 of this document. It talks in here a little bit of that we need to be independent as auditors. I cannot be sitting on your city council and perform your audit. I need to come in with an independent set of eyes and look at it. So that is something that we document annually because it's very important. And if we weren't, the audit wouldn't count, is really what would happen. On page 2 of this document, it talks about financial statement disclosures. Your city reports on a cash basis. So when money comes in the door, it's revenue. When money goes out, it's an expense. There really aren't any like accounts payable, accounts receivable. You're not doing accrual basis accounting where you're recording things in the period that it was incurred, not basically only on cash. You're reporting on cash in, cash out. That is it. But the one difference in your financial statements is the PERS footnote, which is a pretty significant estimate for the city. And I will show you that because you have the financial statement. I'll show you what your PERS liability is as of the end of the year. It talks in here if we recommended any adjustments to the numbers based on what we were originally given. There were no, we did not recommend any adjustments to your numbers. The one thing that we do annually is we help with the cash basis reporting. So how the city records, the big one is its PERS liability. So there is a payroll that happens in June 2020. That payment isn't made until the beginning of July because you kind of have to close out your payroll period first. So that number, when we get your numbers initially, we see that PERS liability sitting there as something that needs to be paid. From a cash basis standpoint, we're not going to report that because you don't pay it till July. So we do some what we call reclassification entries, and we just make sure we are reporting exactly what was paid, not that liability that was sitting out there. So we help with that annually, and it's just part of reporting on a cash basis. So we don't call that an audit adjustment. It's just making the financial statements work because we had you guys make no changes to your financial statements as part of that. The only other thing I want to talk about in this letter is actually the attachment. So I have requirements as far as being an independent auditor of what I need to do. There are professional standards out there that say what I need to do. Starting on page 4 of this governance letter, this is the management representation letter, which Preston got the privilege of signing as he does annually. If you read down through this, this is everything that the city has to represent to us so that we could put our name on those financial statements. Because we are not in the city daily. We're not in all of the meetings. I mean, we read the city council minutes. We have a lot of conversations about what's happening, but we don't get to see everything. So this representation letter is basically saying the city has told me everything that I need to know as an auditor to present this information fairly. And so you can read down through this. It is lots of information that is in there, but really we're relying quite heavily on management that they're not hiding anything from us. And clearly we're not aware of anything that was hidden from us because we would not have issued our financial statements as part of that. So that's the governance letter. I want to briefly show you the actual financial statements. I do not expect you to look and memorize every page of this. It's really no fun to do that, honestly. But these are your financial statements, and I'm just going to point out a few items for you in here. So this is a 56-page document. Yay. The farther you go down through this document, the more detail you are going to get into. I always recommend that as city council members, you read the management discussion and analysis. It's a short section up at the front, compares last year to this year, and talks about the changes. So that is a very concise way to understand what's happening in 56 pages of this document. So I will click on the MD&A. This is page 1 of the MD&A, and it just kind of shows you some of your numbers and walks through a narrative for you. Once you get past the management discussion, you're going to get into your actual numbers that are in here. And there are a few that I'm going to point out to you that are completely different than you have seen in the past. So this is what I'm going to call your balance sheet. You're reporting on a cash basis, so you have cash really sitting there on your balance sheet. That is really all that you have. The one thing that is new this year on this page, you have this inter-fund loan between the water fund and the general fund. So the general fund loaned $600,000 to the water fund related to the water capital project that is being done, was being done. It was still being done when I was there as of the June 30th date. But the water fund is going to owe the general fund $600,000 back. This line has not been in your financial statements historically because that loan happened during the fiscal year 20. Okay. Once you get past that, you're going to get into more at a fund level. The one we were looking at up front was basically just here's all your governmental activities that are paid through property taxes primarily. And then you've got all of your water and sewer kind of in a bucket. Now, once you get past that, it's going to start splitting out into funds, which you're used to looking at because that's really how a city's budget by the individual fund. So you're going to see a balance sheet splitting it all out by fund, and these totals are going up to that front one that we were just looking at. So I'll scroll through this a little bit. You'll see we do a balance sheet, and then we do revenues and expenses for each one of the major funds that are in there. After we get past the governmental, you're going to get into your business one, so your water and sewer. So you're going to have a balance sheet, and then you're going to have your revenues and expenses in here. So pretty straightforward, but as soon as you start turning pages, there are tons of numbers. And so that's why I say the MD&A is a good place. Once you get past those, you're going to get into what are called the footnotes. And the footnotes describe your accounting policies, why you record things the way that you do. And so if you're curious on how cash is handled, there's a section in here for cash. But what I wanted to show you in the footnotes is the PERS liability that you have for as of June 30, 20. So basically, PERS is underfunded. We all know that. Rates keep going up and up and up. That's what is happening. But the city's proportionate share of the PERS liability as of year end is $712,000. So what is that number? That is, here we go. It's the present value of your future payments. And really all it is PERS knows what their liability is. They've allocated it to all of the individual districts within PERS. And so your portion of the total liability is $712,000. So what that really means is since it's underfunded, rates are going to continue to go up. But I'm not telling you anything that you didn't already know, because that's the way that it is. The other thing that we look at as far as doing the audit, the state requires us to look at some specific compliance areas to make sure that the city is complying with them, including how you adopt your budget and how you make large purchases, because there is clear rules on what needs to be done with that. So we look at them annually, and we did not have any findings as it related to those during the year. So we gave, I'll say, a clean opinion on that one. So that's your financial statements. Are there questions on the financial statements themselves or what I've talked about so far before I move on to the third section of my presentation? Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is I generally have a handout for you when I show up at the meeting, but I did not show up. So I am going to share this with you here on screen. And if the city council wants a copy of it, I can send it to Preston and he can distribute it out to the city council. But this is just something I put together to kind of show you what's happened during the fiscal year that we audited, which finished June 30, 2020. So there's really two things I want to point out to you in here. One of them being what is going on with the city's cash in their governmental funds. Because I've got two charts here that say 2019, you got a whole lot of cash in your general fund. And then all of a sudden, it's just going that direction. So this basically is just showing what cash has done historically. Very steady, 19, 20, okay. So what happened in 2019, right at the end, it was in June of 2019, the city got bond proceeds related to, I believe it's the fire station. and it came in right at the end of the year and you had not spent any money on it. So all of a sudden you've got $6 million worth of cash sitting in your general fund, clearly restricted to a specific purpose. So when you get down into 20, you'll see that cash has gone way down at that point, and that is really the construction that happened during the year. So once that project is done, the cash will more even out to what it has been. But that is a giant spike, for at least 2 years in there.
Beautiful spike.
Yeah, and then I see this next chart, and I'm like, that's the stock market right there. That's what it's doing. But what I want to show you, this one up here is all of your governmental funds, because you've got street and other things. This one breaks out the general fund specifically. So what happened is the bond proceeds came into the general fund, and then most of it got transferred out to the fire station bond fund. And so you were just playing, cash is just moving all over the place there within those funds. It's real, the capital expenses are being done through the fire station bond fund. And so that's why all the money was transferred into there, just to account for it's outside of the general fund, which is a very common way to do it. Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out to you in the general fund. So what we look at in the general fund, can the general fund sustain itself? So basically the property taxes that you're getting in the general fund, and there's some other revenues that are coming in, is that enough money to pay for your current expenses in the general fund? So let me show you that back on the financial statement, just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about with the numbers here. So if I go to the fund financial statements, I'm going to zoom in because I'm assuming people are going to have a lot of trouble seeing it unless I do that. So general fund had about 1.1, 1.2 million in revenues. A lot of that is property taxes. Your expenses for the year were almost spot on with that. So you basically broke even as it relates to revenues and expenses in the general fund. That has not always been that way for the city. Historically, it's been a little bit behind. And one thing that was done to kind of help that, there are franchise fees that are being paid to the general fund from water and sewer. So water and sewer are basically transferring money to the general fund in order to help with these. And that is a very common approach for cities to do because really there is stuff in the general fund that water and sewer should be paying for. And so these franchise fees are a way to do that. So this chart right here, this year you basically broke even. So this red line, this is, if it was up here, revenues equal expense. If it's below that line, expenses exceeded revenues. So that's why when you get right here, we're spot on pretty much because we broke even for the year. But this blue line, this includes those franchise fees that water and sewer are paying. So you're actually increasing your general fund because of those transfers. If you did not have those transfers, revenues would equal expense, and that's about the extent of it. So this is a very good indicator for the city on how its general fund is doing. That is why I include this. If you're below the line, especially if you have to transfer and you're still below the line, your general fund's going the wrong direction, and it's not going to be able to sustain itself. We always look at that as part of our planning for the audit to make sure we're comfortable with what we're seeing in the general fund. The other thing that I wanted to show you, and this one really looks like the stock market to be honest. But what I wanted to show you was what happened with cash in the water fund. So in 2019, you were up here $600,000. This is where the construction project is being done for the water. And so what happened is you've spent cash, and you're actually negative for cash in the water fund. How is that possible? It's because you took that loan out from the general fund for that $600,000. So you're actually sitting kind of in a hole for what you have. There is cash sitting in the fund, but with that liability that you owe back to the general fund, you're in the hole for your fund balance. And so that is something that the city will be working on. It was definitely planned for, but their water fund is going to have to pay back the general fund. And then you'll see this blue line go in the other direction. So completely different, I will say, charts from what I've historically shown you, in the sense that lots of activity happened during fiscal year 20. As you can see, lots of big projects going on, lots of money spent during the year. So you've got your cash numbers down. I don't know, Preston, did you want to say anything kind of related to that? It's pretty painful seeing that your fund balance is negative sitting here in the water fund.
Well, we're gonna talk about raising rates. We chose not to last year, not even to keep up with inflation, and we got to seriously be doing that this year, keeping up with inflation.
Yeah, and really one thing that we look at as part of the audit is how you're doing in relation to what you budgeted for the year. And I said, kind of talking about the compliance work we need to do, looking at did you overexpend any line items in your budget that you had? No, you did not. So the first step to really, making sure that you have adequate money is to follow your budget. And not every city follows that, and they do have over expenditures, and that just causes your cash and just to go down. It really does. So the more fiscally sound that you can be with following your budgets, that's very helpful in here as well. So that is basically my presentation. Like I said, we were on site again this year, and that honestly made it quite a bit easier for us. Some of the remote auditing that was being done, it's hard to do. It really is. FaceTime, albeit socially distanced, is a much better way of doing it than trying to do an audit virtually. It just doesn't work that well. So I appreciate the city allowing us to be on site and work through the audit, pretty similar to how the audit has gone in the past. Okay, so that's what I have for a presentation. I am open to questions if there's any additional questions.
Ryan, are you able to, I know you said you could you please send those handouts to Preston so he can email them to the council?
I absolutely will. Please give me a few minutes to reread my responses in there. I don't want to misspell anything, but yes, I will send that probably tomorrow morning, actually.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Well, if there's no other questions, that is my presentation. So thank you.
Brian.
I appreciate you allowing me to be here and talk a little bit about, I know numbers that a lot of people are like, what, right? You just want to know that you have a good document, and you do, and you have a good finance staff that helps us get through the audit quickly. That's all we can ask for as auditors.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion on that topic, we will move on. We need to approve the city council meeting minutes of January 14, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from the council meeting on January 14th, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, minutes are passed. Additions or deletions from the agenda. I believe we do have one change that Preston is going to tell us about.
Well, Your Honor, just switching of the order a little bit, because we have a guest here tonight, our city attorney, Bill Monahan. He's going to be part of the orientation. So because of the driving conditions and him getting back up to the Portland area, just a request to move 10B on the agenda up to 9C.
Okay,
Get the appointments done and then go into the orientation. We get his portion done a little earlier and he can be on the road.
okay, everybody understand that change? Moving item 10B, the city council orientation, up to 9C, and that would push the purchase new water meters to be 9D.
Is he here now?
Yes, he
Yes.
is.
I mean, could he go now before I just hate for him to be stuck here longer than necessary if he has to drive to Portland.
The orientation would be for a new counselor. Do we need to appoint that first?
Yes.
So
Would be my opinion, yes.
Okay, then what, I mean, could he go maybe as 9B if he's not orienting the boards and commission members?
Well, that will only take 30 seconds or so,
Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
it shouldn't matter. Okay, so we'll make that change. Citizen input on non-agenda items. I want to read this, if I may, before we get there. Tonight, we will have members of the public join us live for our meeting. We ask that members of the public keep their mics on mute until recognized. If you would like to speak during an item, please use the raise hand function in your Zoom window. After the staff report and council has discussed the item, we will take comments or questions from the public. Since this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, we ask that each person be allowed to finish their statement before anyone responds, okay? We appreciate everyone's patience as we all deal with this strange way to hold a public meeting, but here we are, so. Okay, any citizen input on non-agenda items?
Hi, this is Greg Goulart. P.O. Box
Greg.
1077. Howdy, P.O. Box 1077.
Great, thank you, Greg. Go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, so it's been real busy around town lately. A lot of activity going on. It's looking good. I'm very excited about what's coming. I also wanted to thank the council, the mayor, and the city for allowing these this trial of public commenting. I appreciate it. And so with that, I know you guys are going to be considering raising the right-of-way franchise fees this evening. And, it's my opinion that now's not the time to increase, especially since it gets passed on to the consumer. And so I just encourage you folks to do what you did last year and just push it off, another cycle. And really, that's all I have to say. And again, thanks for allowing public comments.
You bet, Greg. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, we will move to number 9, action items. I left 2 years remaining on my council term when I became mayor-elect with the 2020 November general election. On January 14, council declared a vacancy on the city council for a 2-year term ending 12/31/22. According to Chapter 7, Section 28 of the city charter, the mayor shall make the appointment with the advice and consent of the council. The city has advertised committee vacancies in newsletters and the reader board at City Hall. So that being the case, I would like to recommend Jeremy Ramirez to be appointed as the city councilor to fill this vacancy. Jeremy has been attending council meetings for several years. He served on the Veterans Park Development Committee and was part of that group of us that visited various schools around the county to get input from the students as to what they would like to see go in the park. Put a lot of work in on that effort. And he is now currently serving on our budget committee. So with this show of service and dedication to our community, I'd like to recommend Jeremy Ramirez to serve as a councilman for the city of Lafayette. Is there any discussion or comments regarding that?
I would like to say something. Were the applications for the volunteer services reviewed before that decision was made?
Yes.
Okay. I personally believe that Kelly Shippick would be a great addition to the council board, you know, with her being at the school and everything. So.
Okay.
I would like to know if any consideration was put into the voting totals from the election as has been traditionally considered.
Yes, that was considered as well. Yeah, but that's not an automatic policy. So
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
I would like to go ahead and voice my support for Greg, who has been involved on many levels with the city, though not formally in roles, has been here for some time, seems to have a tremendous respect from the citizens I've talked to, and has shown a genuine interest going above and beyond to review contracts we're involved with in long-term policy.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'd like to voice my support for your recommendation for Jeremy Ramirez. Jeremy ran twice for election, and I think that takes a lot of perseverance. And after the first election, he did not let him get that down. He went on to commit service to committees in town. He's involved, he's informed, and I think Jeremy would make a great addition.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Anyone else?
I'd just like to say, I don't think there's a bad decision in here. Kayla, I agree. I think that Kelly would make a great addition. Lee, I think Greg would make a great addition. And I think that Jeremy's going to make a great addition. So I think, it's the contributions we see from all citizens of Lafayette on whether it's other committees, the city council. I think we've got lots to choose from, and I voice support for all of them, but ultimately I do support your decision, Mayor, for Jeremy.
Thank you.
And I will add that I will be voting against this appointment. I respect the service that Jeremy has put in, and I think the city appreciates it. To Christine's point about running twice in a row, I think that we're here to represent citizens that elected us, and I don't believe, I don't remember where Jeremy finished in the most recent election cycle, but I think this appointment would be non-reflective of citizen input.
Okay, thank you, Lee.
I would like to speak if I have a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
This is Sheila. I'd like to speak for a moment. I would like to basically say that I support Greg. I think he would be a really good fit for this situation for all the reasons that other people have already spoke. I do want to say that I do not support this appointment, although I do very much appreciate Jeremy's commitment to the city and all of the committees that he has been working on.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Anyone else? All right, so as far as procedure, I have made my recommendation, so we need a motion.
I'm happy to make the motion. You know, I don't know what happens after a vote if it doesn't pass, but I move to appoint Jeremy Remedies to the council vacant position, which has a term expiration of 12/31/2022.
Okay, is there a second? Will someone second that? If not, the motion will die for lack of a second. Is there a second? Okay, hearing none, the motion dies. So I'm not sure where we go from here. This is the first time I've had this situation. Preston, can you enlighten us a little bit? It's the
Well, the position's gonna go unfilled unless you agree to somebody else. So one thing you could do is talk to the counselors again, and hopefully they might change their mind, come around to your thinking. But ultimately, you have to approve it. So this is a special authority you have under the charter to appoint to an elected position. If the council doesn't agree, well, and you're at an impasse, the position goes unfilled.
okay, well, it looks like that's where we're at. So I mean, I'm not going to twist anybody's arm. I shared why I recommended Jeremy. I still feel that's the best appointment. I took everything into consideration. Vote count from the last election, service to the community, attendance at council meetings, all of that. I looked at all of that and chose Jeremy as my recommendation. So if we cannot get a motion to appoint, then I think that raises puts us in a stalemate situation. So
A suggestion, Your Honor?
yes, please.
How about hearing from Jeremy on this? Because he's involved in the meeting tonight, and you can maybe ask for Jeremy to make a statement.
Okay, sure. Jeremy, would you like to say anything?
Sure. First and foremost, I want to thank you for the nomination. I'm flattered that you have faith in me to serve as a counselor for the city. To some of the counselors' points as far as where I fell within the vote totals, I won't lie, I was third down the list from the remaining counselors that weren't elected. I'm not going to hide that. Anyone can go and double check that. I've enjoyed working with the city in regards to the budget committee. I'm proud of the work that we did with the Veterans Park Committee, developing those plans, and I would love to serve the community and plan to continue to serve the community in one way or another through the committees if that ends up being the decision of the council. However, I would love the opportunity if anyone feels that I deserve that honor, but I respect everyone's opinions, and it's ultimately their decision, and I'll respect whatever you and the rest of the council decide.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy, for sharing that. After hearing that, let me reopen the opportunity for anyone to make a second to the motion, or provide any input you want to provide at this point. Anybody change their mind? How are we feeling? Okay, no more input. So it doesn't sound like anybody has changed their mind. So I guess what we have is a vacancy with the way the process works, right? I mean, it's my appointment, but the council has to approve it, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that didn't happen. So I guess for now we have a vacant position.
Right. We can continue to advertise. Would you want us to do that or not, or bring it back on the next agenda, or you'll just let me know how you would want to proceed on that.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Yeah, so council, you have to excuse me. It's a little bit here, not having been through this specific process before. It's a little awkward trying to figure out exactly where we go from here. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, if I may, I would just again encourage you to consider Greg for the position, as multiple counselors have showed support for that recommendation. And obviously you'll take your time to consider other candidates or how to move forward, but I would encourage you to continue to keep Greg in mind.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor Witherspoon,
Yes.
and I would just like to state why I believe Ms. Shippick would be a good option. She's heavily involved with Washer, and I believe she was one of the teachers who had actually come prior to us having to appear remotely. There's just so much going on with the COVID and the impact of the school and everything. And we're expanding now with this new development coming in. I just think it would be great to have a counselor who was well supported by the community, but who can also give us kind of that insight of the school.
Okay, great. Thank you for that input, Kayla. I will let you know, this is jumping the gun just a little bit on our agenda tonight. But Kelly has accepted a position on our planning commission. And I don't know if that would make a difference, but I appreciate the input. Any other counselors have any other input on any other potential appointees before we just close this discussion for now? Okay, so I will continue to look at this opening and take into account what you have shared with me tonight. And I will try to be prepared to make another appointment at our next meeting. Does that sound okay with everybody?
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you. So let's get these committees taken care of, and then we'll get to our orientation. Okay, so page 10. I'd like to take this in two parts. We've had people turn in volunteer applications to the city, and I have spoken to these folks, and they have accepted these positions. So there's 4 open committee positions, but there's also a couple of counselor responsibilities that we'd like to look at tonight too, and I'd like to treat those separately. Okay, so I'd like to deal with the appointments to the committees first. Well, I have, just to let you know who has expressed interest in these and who I've talked to. This would be for the well, first of all, we'd have to move to reappoint Doreen Van Tyne to the Budget Committee. I've spoken with Lillian Barnett, and she has accepted, well, she says she's interested in serving on the Budget Committee. We also received an application from Shirley Burkett, who has expressed interest in serving on the Budget Committee. I was not able to get a hold of Shirley. I called a few times, but have not heard back yet, but I'm assuming since she checked that box on her application that she is willing to serve there. I spoke with Kelly Shepik, and she expressed that she would accept an appointment to the Planning Commission. And I spoke with Becky Schiffer, and she is excited about possibly being on the Downtown Design Review. So that would leave one Planning Commission position still open. We did not receive enough volunteer applications to fill all of these, but those would be my recommended appointments. Oh, any discussion on those?
Your Honor,
Yes.
Greg's got his hand up.
Oh, Greg, you have your hand up. Okay.
No, sorry. I never put it down from citizen input. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So any discussion regarding these appointments to committee?
What's the term for these, or is it just until they step down?
Lillian Barnett, the Budget Committee, term ends 12/31/22. Shirley Burkett, Budget Committee, the term would end 12/31/21. Kelly Shepik to the Planning Commission, the term would end 12/31/23. And Becky Schiffer to the Downtown Design Review and Award Committee, that term would end 12/31/22.
Yeah, Jim, I think that's on page 10 of the PDF. I think it's page 10 of the packet on the bottom with
That's
the
okay.
suggested motions.
Oh,
That's where
okay.
they listed them. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm seeing them now towards the back with all each committee. So
Yep.
thank you for that, though.
Yeah. Okay, any discussion regarding these appointments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
You just stated that you just haven't reached Shirley, but you believe that she'll accept the appointment. Was that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, she's been on there before. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Preston. She's been,
It appeared that, and so I was a little confused there.
I'm sorry, what was that, Kayla?
I was a little confused by her application because it appeared on there that she was previously on the committee.
Yes,
She was.
she was.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
You guys ready for a motion?
Yes,
I move to reappoint Doreen Van Tyne to the Budget Committee for a term ending 12/31/23.
And I would like to be the one to second that motion, as I had the privilege to work with Doreen on the Planning Commission and truly respect her work. So I will second that.
okay, thank you.
Should I do a
Should we-
motion for all of them at once?
Yes, please.
I move to, I'll just move on to the next one then. I move to
Yeah.
appoint Lillian Barnett to the Budget Committee for a term ending 12/31/22. I move to appoint Shirley Burkett to the Budget Committee for a term ending 12/31/21. I move to appoint Kelly Shepik to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/23. I move to appoint Becky Schiffer to the Downtown Design and Review Award Committee for a term ending 12/31/22.
Okay, and Lee, do you second?
I will second 2 through 6 in addition to number 1 there.
Okay. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you and congratulations to those folks, and thank you very much for volunteering to help our city in this way. We really appreciate it. Okay, now let's deal with the counselor positions. We have one position to be on the Downtown Design Review and Award Committee, and another position to help with the Yamhill Regional Water Authority. So let me just open that up to the council. Is there anyone who is interested in serving in either of these two capacities?
Wade, I would love to be part of the Downtown Design and Review Award Committee.
That's- That's wonderful, Sheila. I was hoping you would.
Me
Okay.
too. I was gonna nominate you.
Do I need to speak on my behalf, or it sounds like you already thought that that was a good idea?
No,
You've been voluntold.
I know.
Okay. I just,
Personally, I thought it was a great idea, so.
okay, thank you. I just figured I live down here. I, walk down here. I have a small
Yeah.
business, so I feel like I have a really good idea of the businesses down here in the area and some of the improvements that can be made.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
How about the Yamhill Regional Water Authority? Let me go ahead and just ask, Jim, do you have any interest in that?
I mean, not to where I would say, hey, I need to be the first one in line for that.
Yeah.
I think Christine, didn't you reach out and say that you had interest in that as well?
No, absolutely not. Mine's all fire.
Oh, okay. I guess I was confused then. I thought that one was the one you wanted to do.
Yeah, no, water's not my jam.
Yeah, she's fire, not water.
Okay.
True fact.
Well, I just, I've noticed your attention to detail and just thought that might be a good fit for you, but.
I guess I'd be interested to understand what it entails before, saying I really want to do it.
Yeah.
Because it may be a good fit.
Uh-huh.
I guess I'd like that understanding beforehand, and maybe that's more than what we would do tonight, but
Okay.
I can give a few minutes.
All right. Anyone else that has any interest in that? I didn't mean to pinhole Jim on that one. He came to mind when I saw this opening. So, but is there interest on anyone else's?
I have the same opinion as Jim about further understanding what's entailed there. So maybe not something I'm ready to jump into this evening.
Yeah.
You want me to give a few minutes or or we'll wait till next time?
Yeah, should we go ahead and do Sheila's now and leave the other one for next month? Or
Yeah,
I don't think
you can. I can talk about the Regional Water Authority briefly.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I said this was going to take 30 seconds and I was wrong. So I apologize for that. Preston's going to go ahead and share a little more about what that responsibility entails.
Well, thanks, Your Honor. The Yamhill Regional Water Authority is a 190 organization under ORS Chapter 190. It's actually Carlton, the city of McMinnville, and the city of Lafayette have formed this consortium to develop policies and make decisions on behalf of all three jurisdictions. And the main objective is to acquire water rights, work together, bring in other cities like Dundee, like Newburgh, that are very interested. And eventually, under this umbrella, a regional water treatment facility will be constructed. That may be 15 years down the line, but we're moving in that direction. So there are a lot of big decisions that need to be made, but it's not going to be in the next few years, but we're building to that. A lot of the heavy lifting on the committee's already been done with forming the committee, acquiring water rights, and purchasing water from us, from McMinnville Water and Light. So there's water issues are going to be very big for this city in the next 4 or 5 years. And as we work toward paying off the debt to Mac Water and Light, which would be a 10-year payback, at that point, the city really needs to be in a position to determine what our level of investment in the regional system is going to be. So the big decisions are coming at us. They're still years away, but this is a great opportunity to learn about the regional system and what's going on, help report back to council. This board meets every 2 months. And then it doesn't meet, maybe once or twice a year they don't meet. So you're probably looking at about 5 meetings a year, which is generally on the 3rd Tuesday in the morning. We've been doing it virtual now for several months. But for me, it's very interesting. We have other cities come in to learn, work out, talk about how they can collaborate. And it's very important future decisions for us that are coming. So it's a good time to get involved now and learn it and be on this board as they make important, very important decisions about 4 or 5 years from now.
Okay, thank you, Preston. So having heard that, did it pique anybody's interest?
Or make everyone run away?
I don't think it's something I'm going to decide on tonight as far as wanting to or not. It is interesting, Preston, you know, what you went over. So I may look into it a little bit between now and later. Again, no commitment either way right now, but tonight I won't be able to make that decision.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Jim. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and ratify Sheila, and then we'll leave this position open for next month, okay? So do I hear a motion in regards to Sheila's appointment to the Downtown Design Review and Award Committee?
I move to appoint Counselor Newman to the Downtown Design Review and Award Committee for a term ending 12/31/22.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, there you go, Sheila. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to move to our city council orientation.
Kick it off, Your Honor.
Please do. Preston and Bill, would you like to come over and join us?
So we've got a tag team approach to present the information tonight. There's a kind of a lengthy outline there, but I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of time to go through this, but it's mainly to hit some highlights and then stop for questions when there's anything else the council wants to ask about. We can certainly address those as we go, but we've got section by section. I'm going to start it off. We've got Wade involved. We've got the city attorney involved, and Kevin's going to be involved too. For I think most of you, you've heard a lot of this before. And for those like Jim and others that have taken the training from League Essentials or any other league training, a lot of these are very familiar subjects. So our goal isn't to be comprehensive. It's really trying to be to give emphasis to certain areas. I'll go ahead and start with the first section here, policy documents. These are all very important policy documents for the city that are available on our website. Council's been provided with them. And sort of like how the federal system, you've got federal law, state law, local ordinances and policies. The same thing kind of follows on the land use side. I kind of list the municipal code and the land development code together. Those are local ordinances, but on the land use side, we've got statewide planning goals, our comprehensive plan, and then our land development zoning ordinance. And beneath that are all of our implementing policy ordinances like public works standards and all that. But all of these are complementary to one another. None of them individually are perfect. You know, there are idiosyncrasies in each one of them. There's no fatal flaws, but when something needs to be updated for statute or some other reason, we update those. We tend to do personnel policies fairly frequently because state law changes, and then we generally just follow the guidance of city county insurance services and do updates there. So some of these don't change, you know, the charter, for instance, that's only changed by a vote of the constituents here. The annual budget is probably the most important thing you do every year, is develop the work plan, recognize our expenditures, recognize our revenues, approve our expenditures. That changes every year. It's a huge effort, and it's very important. And that's probably the thing that changes the most on this list. But they can all be reviewed at the pleasure of the council at different times. If you need Phil to bring those back or anything, that can be done. Nothing's perfect. We don't expect them to be. The minute they are, they turn to need to be updated again. But is there any questions about any of those policy documents? Anything you'd like to talk about? Of course, there are a lot of policies you approve. These aren't the only ones, but these are probably the most important things that really give the direction of the city. And again, those are all available on our website, and they can all be brought to council if you ever feel a need to look at something else specifically. Is there anything you want to bring up on that section? Probably not. Okay, so Your Honor, you want to take it? Good governance.
Yeah, good governance. That's what we need to provide for our city. That's us. We need to work together as a team to accomplish the goals of the city. We need to represent our community, right? We are not here to promote our own personal agendas. We are elected officials of the community, and therefore we need to carry out the wishes of the citizens of Lafayette. That's what we're here for. We need to work together well, support each other. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree. Obviously, that's not the case. There's going to be issues that come up that we have very different opinions on, but we will express those opinions respectfully, and we will treat each other with respect at all times. And we will show a face of unity to our community. We'll come to resolutions on issues that we don't agree with. Not every vote's going to be 6-0, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be. But we do have to, if we are on the short side of a vote, we need to accept that decision and support it and move on. So I fully anticipate that. I'm really excited about the council we have in place, and I look forward to getting a lot done for the community of Lafayette together. Okay.
Very nice.
Mayor and council roles.
Bill, Ernie.
Well, thank you very much. So council, nice to meet you all. I'm Bill Monahan. I've been your city attorney for the past 2 years under contract through the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. I'm the general counsel by contract to the COG. So Sean O'Day, who was the executive director a couple of years ago, and I have done quite a bit of training on Governance 101. So a lot of the ideas that I'm going to express tonight come from training that we've done for throughout the COG area. We have a new executive director coming on board next week. I think he's actually already arrived. If you come to the annual meeting next week, you'll get a chance to meet him. That's Scott Dadson. He's coming from North Carolina, so he's got a learning curve also to learn about Oregon law and Oregon process. But I expect that we'll be continuing to offer training that hopefully in the future you'll get to go to along with other folks from throughout the COG area. But I'm happy to be here tonight to go over some topics. So the first one that we want to talk about is making informed policy decisions. As you know, you have a charter that's unique to you, that's been approved by your voters, and that's your base document to follow. You're a very unique one, which I just saw played out in the appointment process. That's very unique to Lafayette, and you played it perfectly. You followed it absolutely correctly. But under the charter, the council is responsible for making decisions as a body. All of your authority as a member of city council comes in your capacity working as a member of the council, with the exception of the defined role of the mayor or anything that you as the council decide that you want to delegate to any individual member of council. But your authority is in making decisions as a group and making policy decisions. So to do this successfully, it's important that you be familiar with the charter, that you obtain complete and factual information to be able to make your decisions. And when you make your decisions, to be clear with the directions that you give. So for instance, when you adopt a new ordinance, it's important that you look at the language within those ordinances and be clear as to how it is to be interpreted and to be administered. And you have quite a bit of discretion of the council's authority to interpret your ordinances as you go forward after they've been adopted. So it's important your policies be expressed in ways that are clear to the public. Any decision that the council makes has to be made by the council as a whole, and the council has no authority to act on administrative matters. You have a council manager form of government, council administrator form of government, where you delegate the day-to-day responsibility to your city administrator. So you stay out of those matters, with the exception of the express language of your charter, which gives you the ability to speak on certain items at a council meeting, exclusively at that council meeting. But the carrying out of those details rests with your city administrator. Second topic we want to talk about is email and social media and quorums. We kind of group those all together. Email communications that are made by you in your capacity as a city council member are public records and need to be retained under the Oregon Public Record Law. So you need to be careful on how you maintain those and make them available so that they can be retained properly. So it's recommended that you set up a system where you do not communicate about city business using either your personal email or your business email, that you do it through the city's email. So a good practice, for instance, is if somebody reaches out to you on your personal or business email to talk about city business, instead of responding from that email address, send it to your city address. I'm assuming everyone has a city address. Yes. Send it through your city address and ask the writer to respond back to you through that. Another practice to be concerned about, though, is in sending communications to the city council where you're expressing opinion on something that could be coming up for a future vote. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Social media I want to talk about is when you engage in social media concerning city business, that creates a public record that you need to retain. And typically, you'll be monitoring that as opposed to someone from the city. So it's your responsibility to collect those posts that you might make and submit them so they can become a public record. So again, when you're expressing something about city business, and of course, the community sees you as a member of city council 24 hours a day. So while you may make an attempt to separate your personal feelings from your your activities as a city council member, that can be quite difficult. But it's important that you may periodically want to take any social media posts that you've had about city business and provide them to the staff so they can retain them properly within the city's records. And I think you're going to be covering public records law if you haven't already, but there's Oregon's public records law is one that makes available to the public most every document that is created by the city, with exceptions of those that have a defined exception. Personal social media posts that you make on your own, representing your own opinion, you need to be careful to make sure that you don't engage in some level of activity that puts you into a place where you have personal liability. There have been cases where individual members of council and individual members of staff have made comments on social media posts where they've been brought to task on a potential defamation action because of the comments that are made. So you need to be careful on the comments that you do make. Any post that you make that's outside the normal responsibilities of you as a city council member that would not be, may not be covered by your city insurance policy. And I'm going to talk about policy, that policy in a couple of minutes. Let's deviate, if we can, to quorum. So under your charter, a quorum is to take action. The city council have a quorum, has to have a majority of the members of council. So the mayor is a member of council, but the mayor is not a voting member unless there's a tie. So a quorum for you to conduct business is 4 out of the 7 members of council. But that doesn't mean that you can't make a decision with less than a full complement of council acting. So there's different ways of progressing. But typically the 7 members means a quorum is what's necessary to meet is 4, but in making a decision, it's a vote of the majority of the members of the council who are present and voting. Present and voting. So you need to look at the times that the mayor is not able to vote, that he doesn't qualify as one of those folks to determine what a majority vote is. Serial meetings are an issue that is a big concern in Oregon for the last couple of years. Serial meetings are when individual members of council act outside of the noticed city council meeting and have conversation and deliberate towards or make movement towards a decision. So typically, the Oregon public meeting law requires that for any meeting of council to take place, there needs to be a notice of that meeting telling the community when the meeting's going to take place, how it's going to take place, where it's going to take place, what's going to be on that agenda. That meeting has to be accessible so members of the public can come in and participate and watch the council take its action. And there need to be minutes of those meetings. But there have been a couple of cases over the last few years where governing bodies have had a series of discussions, one council member to another council member, and then one of those 2 council members has a conversation with another council member about the same topic, and then there might be another conversation. And when they get past the point that they've reached beyond a quorum, they have potentially, in some cases, violated the Oregon public meeting law by creating a serial meeting. And what I wanted to emphasize within this section on emails is emails are considered to be those contacts, those conversations. So the example that I recently saw the League of Oregon Cities give in an elected essentials training was that council member A spoke to council member B about a topic. Then council member B spoke to council member C about the same topic. Then council member C sent an email to another council member. Once you get beyond into a quorum, you've violated the Oregon public meeting law. So you need to avoid that. And if you're going to be having any deliberations towards a decision, conversations that could lead to a decision, then you need to do it in a public way.
Bill, before you move on, I got a question for you. Now, with emails, we all have a city email address. All of that correspondence that comes in and out of the email store, that's all stored.
It's all stored, that's all.
Yes, right. So we, as counselors, don't have to copy emails or nothing like that. That's all stored on our server. But with like social media, there could be a variety of platforms. I mean, is there a best practice how to do that?
Well, and I'm talking, of course, about social media that's not controlled by the city. So someone's going out into Facebook or into someone else's realm. If a council member makes a contact there, a comment there, they should try to copy that contact and submit it to the city so it can be maintained in the public records. Because again, the city's not monitoring those sites. But you're right. The emails that are made from those city business addresses are all being captured. Those contacts that are made in another, from another email address are not, unless they're forwarded into the city system. That's why I suggested forward.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's some policy coordination with other local officials, government officials from other jurisdictions. There will be times that the city is either engaging in negotiations, or as I heard tonight, you've got a couple of committees, particularly on the water situation, where you work cooperatively with other elected officials. And as I recognize, the mayor makes those appointments with the approval of the city council. So clearly there's designated authority to a member of council who needs to then understand what their role is and how far they can go. Now, there'll be times at a regional meeting where a discussion will take place and someone may go to the point of saying, well, is everybody in agreement? Is this what we're going to do? And it's very important that the council member who is in that capacity understands their limitations. They may, before going to that meeting, have talked with their fellow council members and received some parameters of how far they can go and what they can represent. But you need to be very careful that you do not represent that you have authority that hasn't been delegated to you by the mayor and the council. So the best practice there, of course, is to not make a commitment if you don't have authority, and to say, I need to take that back to council. I'll tell you at this point in time that I feel this way or that, but I'll find out what the council feels, because the council needs to make the ultimate decision, and I'll bring that back to you at a regular meeting.
So, Bill?
Yes.
If we're at a community function together, or I think of these city county dinners that they have sometimes, if there are 4 or more of us attending one of those, we just need to avoid talking about city business?
So, Mayor, that's a great question. That gets into a whole area of training that we could give on the Oregon Public Meetings Law. The council needs to make sure that it does not convene a meeting that is not noticed with a majority of the council members talking about city business. Now, there are those social settings like that meeting where it's possible you all would be there, or 4 of you, the majority. And we worry in most settings about transparency of local government, that the public might have an opinion that the only time that you folks would logically get together would be to talk about city business. You may not be talking about baseball or the weather or something else, but we know that you do have those social conversations, but the public may not understand that, and they may be suspicious because of the type of decisions that the council will be making in the near future, for instance. It's okay to go to those settings. It's recommended that when you do, that you not put yourselves in a position to make an appearance that you're having conversations that are about city business. If you take a really conservative point of view, going to those meetings, you could notify the public that that is a meeting that the majority of council members are going to, and just maintain meeting minutes. There are examples too. The league in some of their recent training, they've said that, for instance, a community that was going to deliver the Christmas tree, the holiday tree for an event, it came from their community. The council members all wanted to go to that setting. They all rode in a van together. And they agreed in advance, they were not going to talk about city business. The best way would be to notice that it is a meeting, make it available that the press could sit in and watch, and then follow through and not transact city business.
So, well, on this point, Bill, this also encompasses like the county commissioners
Absolutely.
or Senator Wyden or, you know, any elected officials, basically.
Right.
And your point is, if council does outreach to those, well, don't commit the city or have an idea of what your policy you're bringing or.
That's right. When reaching out to those elected officials, the county commissioners or a member of Congress, whatever, to represent that what authority you have to bring. If you're delegated by the council to get information or to bring a position of council, you're within that authority, you can do that. But if it's your own personal opinion, you should make absolutely sure that you're not expressing something that is understood to represent the opinion of the council unless it's so designated, just so that you prevent those inopportune things. We've seen situations where two members of a city council might be approaching the same elected official, and the elected official assigns things to different staff members, and next thing you know, you've got two totally different grant programs being reviewed that the official's trying to help you with. And there could be bad feeling from that person's office the next time you ask for something. Well, you may end up getting something you didn't ask for. I want to talk a little bit about the annual budget and the approval of adjustments. So through the annual budget process, as you know, and I saw it here tonight, you recognize that there is a citizen electors element of the budget committee. You as council are 7 members of that committee. You have direction from state law to make a good faith effort to obtain an equivalent number of elected people ready, willing, and able to serve to assist you in the budget process. And some communities have a difficult time getting an equivalent number. So you have to make your best effort. If you can't get an equivalent number of people willing, then you can operate with less, but it's not recommended. The process is one that your city administrator makes a proposed budget that is recommended to the budget committee, that then has the ability to ask questions compared to the prior couple of years' budget and make recommendations of changes. And then they approve the budget. They approve the budget and they send it on to the city council, and the city council then makes the actions to adopt the budget. Or did I get those wrong? I think I got it right. Approve and adopt. During the budget year, however, if there are adjustments to be made, you have process to do that. They can be done by following the state budget law. The council has the authority to either approve resolutions to make transfers among the funds of the funds that you've already allocated, or secondly, also make supplemental budgets that make changes to the adopted expenditure appropriations as well as the estimated resources. So as you heard tonight, that during the past audited year, you had the bond monies come in. Once those bond monies came in, you did a supplemental appropriation to add those funds. And you always have to have a balanced budget to show what revenue is coming in and what's going out. The council has discretion, however, to involve those members of the citizen committee. It's recommended that you involve them throughout the year. I don't know if you do, but in some communities, there's regular contact with those citizen members throughout the year. So they stay up to speed. We want them involved in the supplemental budget. We want to make sure that when they come in the next spring, that they're fully aware of what's taken place since the adoption of the last budget. You also have the authority within the community to approve and terminate consultant contracts. The one that you have with the COG for me, the one you have with the COG for our planner, and you have several others. Contracts with the consultants are within the authority of the city council, but the actual implementation of those is through your city administrator. Typically, those contracts will be for several years or for a defined task, and the termination will be defined within the contract. Personal services contracts are typically exempt from public procurement law, but a request for proposals is typically done to obtain the best rates and the most qualified personnel to do the job. There's a topic I wanted to cover about the annual performance evaluation of the city administrator. The administrator, as you know, works under a personal services contract that was negotiated with the city and probably modified sometimes over the term of the contract. And it will provide for an annual performance review. The review is held in executive session. That's a provision of ORS 192-660, where there are specific topics that are open for executive session. It is an executive session unless the city administrator asks that it be done in an open session. There's a provision in that that says that you cannot discuss the salary within executive session. You can talk about generating information so that you can, at a later date in a public meeting, add to the compensation. The council and the administrator should, however, agree in advance as to the timing and the process and the form that is going to be used for a performance review. It's always valuable to do that in advance of when you're going to have a performance review, so you don't use that first discussion to, well, how are we going to do this? And then find out that you're really not ready to engage in that discussion. And very important form that you should be aware of is the annual statement of economic interest. The Oregon Government Ethics Commission has a form that is going to be made available to all of you as council members if you are on council on March 15th. Why I say that date is because the statute specifically says that any individual who is an elected official, the city administrator, member of planning commission, municipal court judge, if they're in that job on March 15th, they have to fill out by April 15th a statement of economic interest that talks about things that took place in the prior year. So those of you who have recently been elected, you have to fill out a form that talks about things from the prior year. And what it does is it requires you to disclose certain things such as your business interests, where you hold an ownership interest in real property other than your primary residence, any honoraria that you might have received in the prior year, any sources of income that you have. And it's important that you do this by April 15th because there is a penalty that's assessed by the state. The important thing for you to do at this time is to make sure that the city offices have your accurate address so that the Ethics Commission can make that form available to you. It's done online. And those are public records, by the way. You have to also disclose any gifts that you receive from entities that have an administrative or legislative interest in the city. What that means is any entity or individual who has an interest in a government decision that you take part in, such as granting of a contract, granting of a land use approval, you need to be concerned about any potential gifts that they may give so you don't violate the gift limit that the statute has or that the city has. The last section that I have in a lot of detail is conflict of interest declaration. So you need to be concerned that under the state law, conflicts of interest have to be declared and action has to be properly taken when you are participating in an official action that would or could result in a financial benefit to you or one of your relatives or a business because of that action. It could result in a financial benefit to you or a family member or a business. So I want to make sure you're aware that there's a publication that the Government Ethics Commission has online. It's downloadable, it's free, and it's called A Guide to Government Officials, Public Officials. And in it, there will be quite a bit of description of conflict of interest as well as gifts and define who those family members are. Because for instance, if a member of your family is going to benefit from a decision that you take part in, you need to be concerned about that. There's two types of conflicts of interest. One is a potential conflict of interest, the other is an actual conflict of interest. The distinction is in the facts. The facts are whether there is a potential or could be conflict of interest, potential financial benefit, that would be a potential conflict of interest. It's a maybe. If it's a maybe, you have to still make a declaration, public declaration, that that conflict of interest exists. You need to get some details about it, and you need to make sure that that is disclosed within the public records. And the public records would be the minutes of the meeting in which you make that declaration. An actual conflict of interest is different. An actual conflict of interest, you know that the decision that's going to be made is going to have some impact on you financially. And if that exists, you have to make the declaration in a public setting, and you then have to recuse yourself from taking part in the decision or in the discussion leading up to the decision. And again, you need to make sure it goes into the public record. So what you do is you ask for an opportunity to make that statement in a public meeting. When you do a land use meeting and you have a conflict, you're going to be going through the script. The mayor's going to get to that point. That would be your opportunity to make that statement. If you have an actual conflict of interest and you have to step out of a decision-making process, I recommend that you leave the room. You not just recuse yourself, but that you leave the room so that there isn't any appearance that you are trying to influence your fellow members of council or the community. So the other key point on that, by the way.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, sure.
So every year I have to state an actual conflict of interest when it comes to our general budget, because my husband is a volunteer firefighter and they receive a small amount for every call they go on. So when it comes to like the budget meetings or when we vote on the budget at the city council, I don't vote, but I generally sit in on the meetings. Should I not even be present when they do that vote and discussion?
In that case, as long as you make, I was going to say, you have to make that announcement of the conflict at each meeting or each occasion that the issue is going to be discussed or debated. So you need to make sure you make that statement at those budget committee meetings or at the council meeting. And in a budget, you're able to, in many cases, sever off the vote on the particular item where your husband is benefited financially. So for instance, you might be able to vote on all the rest of the budget with the exception of the fire budget.
Unfortunately, in this
We
case,
tried
no,
that.
it's not our general budget.
Didn't work.
But
I do make this statement at every meeting I go to. My question was basically, should I be stepping away when they vote, or should I even be present for the conversation at all?
Well, and when I say step away, I mean stepping out of the room, but coming back in to take part in the rest of the discussion, the rest of the meeting. That's the best practice.
right, just not participate on that area that affects the fire.
That's right.
budget.
Yes, that one area. That's right.
Perfect. That's what we've been doing. I just haven't been leaving the room. So I just want to make sure there wasn't a problem there.
Yeah, and I think you're in a good position there. That's not as much of an issue as in the land use arena where it's a quasi judicial decision. And there are very, shall we say, different points of view between the applicant and members of the community, so that there, your influence might be construed as being more of an issue or concern. I want to touch somewhat on personal liability. As you know, you are insured by City County Insurance Services, CIS. Cities are liable for the torts of the officers and employees who act under the scope of their employment or their official duties for the city. As noted before, a member of the council only has authority to act as a member of the council unless it's delegated with specific authority, so they cannot act individually. So when you are acting in your scope of office as a counselor the city's insurer, CIS, will provide coverage for you and the actions that you take. But if a member of council acts alone without the authority and outside of the scope of being a city council member, they can get outside of that coverage and be personally responsible. So for instance, if you get out on one of those social media pages and you make a defamatory statement, it's, well, I was going to say likely, but it's almost absolute. CIS is not going to provide coverage. You're on your own. So you need to be concerned about not acting outside of your designated scope. Examples of some personal liability that council members have gotten into when they step into a place where they violate the council administrator agreement about non-interference in personnel matters. There have been situations where council members have been accused of creating a hostile work environment within a city hall. I've actually seen situations where mayors have been told that they couldn't come into a city hall unless they had prior approval. And those cases where a member of council has a conflict of interest and does not make that declaration, they are outside of their authority as a member of city council and then have personal liability. So you need to be concerned about that. There are resources available to you to better understand that. So I'm going to give you a couple references to some training that are available and resources that are available that you can research on your own, or when you have a particular question, you can address those. The Oregon Government Ethics Commission is the first, and I mentioned that a guide for public officials is available online. They also have staff that are available that you can call and raise an ethics question if you have a question about whether or not you have a potential or actual conflict of interest. I recently went to the Ethics Commission for one of the cities that I serve to see whether or not there could be a class exception from a conflict of interest situation. And I was pleased that it was one of the cities up in the North Santiam Canyon that suffered the devastating fires. And they need to adopt some code language that applies throughout the community. Everybody in the community is going to be affected by it. So when I called to ask for that advice, I was pleased. The next day I had a written opinion that gave us the advice that we needed. So I emphasized the Ethics Commission is a good point of contact. The League of Oregon Cities is another. They hold an annual conference each year. And recently they did their every 2-year elected essentials. Within the elected essentials program that they offered virtually this year, they recently posted those online. So you can go online and see a 1-hour presentation on public meetings, public records, and there's also one that's done by CIS. CIS, of course, is a partner with the league. Kurt Mylander, who's the general counsel for the CIS, recently did a presentation on council member liabilities. So if you're interested, that's one that's well worth seeing. CIS also holds an annual conference. And if requested, we at the COG are available to give a more full training on Governance 101 or land use process. We do land use process for planning commissions and city councils on a regular basis. That's your most difficult quasi-judicial role and the one that has quite a bit of exposure to the city. So I certainly recommend that if you do have some misgivings about the level of training that you have on land use matters, please give us a call. We'd be happy to help you out.
Bill, a question for you. Going back to the conflict of interest, I'm thinking of proximity, like you live across the street where a subdivision is going to go in. Maybe they improve the street in between, maybe they don't, but is there a potential conflict because you're right next to it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Preston. In the land use circumstance, proximity is a factual issue and usually means there's a potential conflict of interest. If you're close by to where development may or may not be approved, you're going to be thinking about whether it improves or decreases the value of your property. So if it could be either way, that's at least potential. You at least have to make that declaration and do your own thought process as to whether or not you feel that you have an actual or potential conflict of interest. If you're sure that the action that could be approved is going to impact your property value, one up or down, that would be actual and you shouldn't take part in it. Proximity, if, for instance, if you own a home and the subdivision could be coming in across the street from you, that I would say that's an actual conflict of interest. If it's 3/4 of a mile down the road, that may or may not have a.
Now, you said actual because you're next to it or across the street?
Well, again, proximity. I think if you're across the street or you're next to it, and the zoning of your property is one that either provides more opportunity for you or enhances your value or decreases your value, I think more cases than not, it's going to be actual.
Okay, what about like a street improvement, which could very well enhance the value of your home?
Sure.
And we do a lot of projects. We do, some of it's underground, some of it's street, I mean, councilors live in the community. Okay, so we're gonna look at approving a street project in front of a councilor's house.
That's usually, well, okay, you just changed the facts. If it's a general project that's throughout the community, it's a long length of street improvement or other infrastructure improvement, it's probably a class exception that it impacts a large area of the community. When it impacts a large area, it could be a class.
Right.
If it's a project that is just going to
3 or 4 blocks,
3 or 4 blocks or 3 or 4 properties, and a council member's property is one of those, then that could be an actual conflict of interest. So the best thing to do is to take that set of facts and to contact the Ethics Commission and ask the Ethics Commission whether or not there's an issue. I'll give you an example. I had a city several years ago where the city was talking about changing its floodplain ordinances and how it would impact the ability for all the properties along the floodplain to be developed, the development potential. One council member happened to have a larger property that was in that area than other members of the council or the community. That council member had an actual conflict of interest. The others had potential, as determined by the Ethics Commission. We posed that question, they made that determination.
right. So,
But initially, the assessment needs to be done by the individual, because the individual council member is responsible for their understanding their own set of facts and to protect their own interests and to make the declarations that are appropriate.
thank you.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so because we are talking about perhaps adopting an urban growth renewal district that would be within a block of my home, does that put me in the proximity of needing to talk to an ethics committee about being part of that potential vote?
Well, if it's close to you and you think it's going to impact the value of your property, you're pretty certain that it's going to impact the value of your property, it's probably an actual conflict of interest, and you're probably best to recuse yourself and not take part in that decision. You may not, if you're going to make the decision to recuse yourself and you're comfortable with that decision, you don't need to ask the Ethics Commission. You don't always have to ask the Ethics Commission before you act. I'm suggesting that if you're on the fence and not sure, and you want to make sure that you're making the best decision, that you'd ask the commission.
Okay, thank you.
You are.
Great question. Thank you, Bill.
Is it Kevin's time?
Yes, Kevin. Kevin, you already.
Thank you for letting me go early. I appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing, Bill.
That was great. Thanks, Bill.
Mayor, council, realizing we are nearly at the 2-hour mark, I'll move through some of this pretty quickly. I mean, we've covered almost all of this individually and in other forums. So
If you have questions, please feel free to interrupt and we'll go from there. So I want to go through kind of the city administrator's role in our organization. It is the chief executive position of the city, and as such, definitely supervises operations of personnel and consultants. You know, we organize the tasks for the departments. We set their priorities, plan and manage capital projects, hire, train, and manage staff, and also direct the work of the consultants that the council hires. So the administrator directs all of the operations underneath the policy decisions that the council makes. One of the things we do often is resolve complaints. We really work hard to find a good solution that satisfies parties. And even if we can't find that solution, we really work hard to make sure people know that they were heard and that we understand what's going on. And sometimes, they take time, and so we try and keep folks in the loop on things like that whenever we can. And then there are some complaints that are just personality disputes between neighbors, and we try and refer those to places like mediation or something like that that can help settle that, because having a dispute with your neighbor is one of the worst things that can go on. So we try and help folks solve their problems wherever possible, if it's not something we can directly solve. And as Bill discussed a little bit, in the budget process, the city administrator is the designated budget officer. So that means the administrator is responsible for planning and drafting the budget for presentation to the budget committee. And once the budget committee adopts, I always get this backwards, adopts or approves the budget, then it's presented to council. And that's the responsibility of the city administrator. It's one of the primary roles. And then through the year, they manage our finances in accordance with that budget that's approved by council and within local budget laws. So anytime we need an adjustment, like we've done several here lately, that's something that we present to council and sometimes to budget committee if it falls within certain parameters. They don't always have to go to budget committee, but we typically keep them informed whenever we have to present something like that to council. The other thing, as we do it tonight, we produce the council agenda. We plan the agenda items, we write the staff reports, and we conduct follow-up. Almost all of that comes out of the administrator's office. We bring in other staff as needed as we can, but that primarily does rest on the administrator. Public processes and records, those fall squarely in our realm too. So we ensure compliance with records laws, any kind of filings requirements, like for our bonds, there's all kinds of special filings that we have to do. So we ensure compliance with those and make sure that everybody who needs something filed with them gets it on time. And then again, records retention. And we've got, I found the other day, we've got a ticket book from 1915 that we've kept. So those are things that we manage. That falls more in the historical section than an active record, but kind of interesting nonetheless. And then finally, we typically handle most of the media relations as well. Any official statement from the city, such as a press release or something like that, goes through the city administrator's office, typically in consultation with the mayor or council. But those all go through the city administrator. So nobody on our staff has the authority to release any kind of information like that without the approval of the administrator. And then response to press inquiries, and we try and keep council as up to date as we can. That we don't get a lot of calls from the press, but we do our best to respond and get them the right information. So as I said, went through it kind of fast. So if you've got questions, please feel free to ask, or you're always welcome to email and call me anytime.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, we'll just power right on through. This next section, council staff relations, relies very heavily on three things. I think most of you have heard me repeat this many times, but Good communications is the heart of a good collaborative relationship. No surprises in public meetings, and don't criticize in public employees that are subordinate to the city administrator. Criticism of me is a totally different thing, but other staff, that should not be done in public. There's no law against it. It just destroys staff relations with council. Unless there's questions on that, Wade, you want to wrap it up for us here?
We are very lucky to have these consultants who work for our city, and it would behoove all of us to know who they are. So let's take a look at them here. Our city planner is Jim Jacks. He is with Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. Our city attorney, who you met tonight, is Bill Monahan with Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. Our municipal court judge is Clifton Ross, who also works out of Carlton. Our two city engineers are Gordon Monroe with Tetra Tech and Hassan Ibrahim with Kern and McLeod. And our building official comes out of Newburgh. His name is Brooks Bateman. So again, we are thankful for those folks and how they provide service for us to govern the city. Any other questions or comments on anything presented in this orientation? Okay. Thank you all for your input. Let's move on then. We are going to section 9, number 9, purchase new water meters on page 18. So let's go back there. Okay, Preston, you want to introduce this to us, please?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I do want to say one thing before you go. There is this first sentence. Thank you, Bill. Have a safe trip home. Okay. You too. The very first sentence, it seems funny to me. Approve the amended capital improvement program CFP for the current to with a new project number 16.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's for the current fiscal year.
For the current fiscal year?
Yeah, with the new project number 16.
With the new project, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. I just needed some understanding. New fiscal year. All right.
Well, this is a very important project we've been trying to do the last few years. We just haven't had the money. And it's been tight in water. We talked about the loan from the general fund to make ends meet, to finish critical water projects. Well, replacing all of our current meters citywide, and I say all, but I mean the ones that are, 17 plus years old. And we have several that are now approaching 20 years old in 2021. We have an opportunity here with the Meadowbrook subdivision to get this project started in a comfortable manner with their phase 1, which is 58 units. We can purchase the software and a good amount of new meters and all, and get that all implemented and work out any bugs we need on the software and have it all ready to go for when people move in to phase 1. We don't have the pressures of replacing meters and going from one billing cycle to the next and getting it done just right. And, it's a good opportunity now to get them, to get a healthy dose of them, get started at a comfortable pace, get them all implemented, get the software in, and be ready to go with phase 1. And then of the Meadowbrook. Now we would continue to budget a certain amount of new meter replacements every year. So we'll have phase 2 next year, and we'll do a certain amount of replacements until all the old ones are replaced. There's many advantages to having this new system. The water committee spent a good deal of time looking at the 3 major manufacturers of water meters in the United States. It was January of last year, the water committee says, let's go with the Mueller standard, which in our opinion of the water committee and the staff was really head and shoulders above the other 2 standards which were considered. So it's because some of these projects are not going to be done this fiscal year, we have an opportunity to borrow from those projects, get some seed money. I'm recommending $40,000, create a new project number 16 and begin the meter replacements this fiscal year. So we borrowed from some projects that don't need that money right now. One of them is project number 8. If you want to turn to the next page on our CIP, that is an important project, but that's going to be bid and will be awarded by council. We're looking at probably April or May of this year, and then it'll be completed in next fiscal year. So just borrowing from a few projects there to create that 40,000 to allow us to be able to do that. That tells you really how that's going to affect our budget. This is all budgeted monies. And we're not impacting projects that have to get done this fiscal year. So council, with this approval tonight, you would be reallocating budgeted monies for project number 16. The overall amount of our CIP, 5.2 million, almost there, that doesn't change. It's just a reallocation. So I do want to kind of talk about these other projects. I can go through the list very quickly and tell you a status of that and what's happening to it. I think you're going to be real excited about a lot of this. To me, it's really where every budget starts, is where your monies go into the one-time projects, capital improvements. Because a lot of operations are static from year to year, but your CIP changes dramatically and the funding for that. So maybe if you had questions about the meter replacement project, maybe this is a good time to talk about that. And then I can go into highlighting where we're at on these other 15 projects.
I've got a question, Preston.
Okay.
We have this quote from Consolidated Supply Company. Is this the only quote we have? Did we need to do more than that, or how's that work?
Well, because they're the distributor for Mueller products in the United States, or in this region of the United States, it's an exclusive thing. So whether we went with other proprietary ones, I mean, the costs are going to be fairly similar. But once we go down the path of our meter replacements, and we're happy with Mueller, they're all going to be Mueller standards. So
there's no requirement in this case to get more than one quote?
There isn't. Okay. No, it's a small amount, plus it's very proprietary, you know, and as long, and with this, your motion, which is kind of extensive, council is acknowledging this is our standard. This is the proprietary standard that we're going to go with. And that's part of the motion. Okay.
I have a few questions. So you said these meters are going to be upgrading across the whole city. Do we have a number? Do you have a number? I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, but like, you know, is it 800? Is it 2,000?
We're looking at about having to replace about 80% of the meters over the next 4 or 5 years. We currently have about 1,500 in place. So 80% of that is about 1,200 meters.
Okay.
That's it gets quite expensive. That's why we have to piecemeal it over time. You know, this would be like our first phase, but we could be doing this for another 5 years.
How long are these meters supposed to last?
Well, they last. There's a warranty where the first 10 years it's 100% in parts, labor, replacement. Then it notches down for years 11 through 15 to 75%. And then 16 through 20 is 50% for warranty. But these are digital meters. They have much less moving parts. They're highly accurate. And the only thing that's really going to go wrong with them is the battery is going to die. And the battery life should be 20 plus years. But when it goes and it has to be replaced. It's rare that something else goes wrong with the meter besides the battery. They're extremely durable, and battery technology is improving. That's going to get better over time. So there's many other benefits to this kind of meter, but the useful life of this meter is going to be 20 years.
Okay. Now they're fully wireless. That means they won't need to go around and touch the meter with a stick, or what's the? You can't read it from City Hall. Do you have to drive through the streets? What's the?
Correct, Jim. With these radio heads on the new meters, you will be able to drive down a street and bring in all the information. But it is what's called an AMR AMI standard, which allows the technology to be upgraded to the like a cell tower at City Hall that could bring it all in. That would be future, but the technology we're investing in is part of that standard. So when that becomes more available, that could be incorporated into the system. So you're correct, Jim, that a lot of our new meters are touch read on the caps. The difference now would be you just drive down the street and bring it all in.
Okay. And then my other question was with the new subdivision. So this proposal is for 115 new meters. You said there's 58 units in the phase one. Are 58 of these 115 going to that, and the rest are being used for the oldest ones in our city?
Sort of. The 58 units would be provided this in phase one of Meadowbrook, and the other ones would be on hand for us for infill project. Anyone that needs a new meter is going to get it. That holds us over until we go into phase two next year, and then we'll be replacing not necessarily the oldest. We want to do it by sections, by groups. We have routes now that we go to read meters that the crew. We probably go by route, starting with the oldest routes, in the city. But it would be, it would all be adjacent there and confined. So we would go by area around until all the city gets updated.
Okay, thank you. I will note a concern I have is that we're proposing to use half of the funds coming from the sewer fund for what arguably would not be. I can't find a way to justify saying this has to do with sewer. So that's a concern that I have. I don't know if you have any good reasoning for that, but I'd like to go on.
Well, the reasoning is because the sewer utility relies on the water consumption. So we don't have a separate sewer meter. It's an expense that should be shared between both enterprise funds. Just like our utility billing system, it's all shared between water and sewer. Our administrative assistant, who is a vacant position right now, but they're split mostly between water and sewer, and then there's some general fund. So the sewer relies 100% on these meters for their billing purposes. So it's very common, and it should be attributed to both enterprise funds.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask about the 2 to 4% adjustment per year? Can you talk about that a little bit? Will it be specifically to houses that have already been, or to meters that have already been upgraded?
Yeah, for folks that already have meters, there's no charge for any of this. This is basically when we buy a meter for a replacement or new construction, we would bill the new construction a hookup fee like we do now. So our fees for hookup would be adjusted. The cost of the new meter in today's dollars with the radio head and all, it's about $205 our cost. So for a subdivision, for instance, they would be charged that amount plus a little more, maybe 5% more. They'd be charged for the time it takes to do the inspections on the water and sewer. And that's it. That would be the hookup fees for a subdivision, which typically puts in all the infrastructure. We just do the inspections. Now for an infill lot, the cost of the meters would be the same, but the hookup fees would be a little different if it's a short side hookup to the water system or a long side. So hookup fees will be based on, really the individual person's situation there. But everyone who's got a meter now would not be charged for the meter replacement.
So the 2 to 4% adjustment you're saying is for the hookup fees?
That would be our cost of the meters, which would then be passed along in terms of hookup fees each year. It would be adjusted.
To the population at large or to the folks who benefit from the new meters?
Just the new meter installation.
Gotcha. Right. Gotcha. Okay, now I'm following. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Just to be clear, there's no charge to people with existing meters.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
How about if I run through the CIP now? Is that?
I'd love to hear an update on that.
Okay, just running through. Watch for hands, Your Honor. I'll go through this kind of quick. Number one is our crossings out here, which Lawson's is working and doing the night work and all. That's nearly complete. All they have to do now is hook them up on the south side, and we got our entire looping done. It's fantastic. This is where we pay for the hydrants the council approved. You remember that? 4 new hydrants for 3rd Street. The price on that came in at $17,250.
Oh.
We were thinking somewhere between 20 and 25. Good price on that. And that'll all be paid for from within these project budget funds. So I tell you, combining that with number 15, ODOT's project, I mean, we really got a good deal. It's nice to be lucky once in a while. I just very pleased with that. Number 2, the fire station. You've seen the progress. We're getting excited, starting to get Terry moved out of here, but we're working through the punch list. And that's going to take a few weeks, but we're down to the nitty-gritty at this point. And we're very excited about that. Now, the companion project with that is going to be the parking lot on 4th Street, sidewalk around 4th, all the way up to Perkins Park. And so the parking lot and number 7 are going to be bid. In fact, the bid is out now. That is an active bid starting this week. It'll be advertised in the Daily Journal next week. And the bid openings on March 4th. So we're going to have hopefully a bid award for council to consider for that project at your March meeting. That would be project number 7, as well as the parking lot, which is within project number 2. So hopefully we'll get good bids on that. The transportation SDC update has been completed. That was a little slop over from last year's work. That got done. the water risk assessment, an EPA requirement. The first phase of that will be done by June 30th. And then we'll budget next year for phase 2. It has to be done by the end of this year. The sewer upgrade at Monroe and Fourth, we're going to bid that here probably by the end of this fiscal year, and we'll have that done by the end of summer. It'll probably be like an end of October kind of. So that's a fiscal year 2022 item. The annual biosolids program is completed. That was completed at $127,000. And again, we've got 2 more years of this before we completely drain our lagoon. So we have to a couple more years of that. And at that point, we can then look forward and do our biosolid beneficial use program, like every 3rd year, working with the farmers and that sort of thing. So that's completed for this year. We talked about number 7. Number 8 is pushed off into next year. We're looking at probably advertising that in March or April. Looking at council award probably in May, and that'll get done late this summer. Number 9, our pump station project. We haven't closed that out yet. We're still working on the chlorination monitor for that, and getting one that works with low flows and our automated system, where depending on the chlorine amounts, the residuals, it will automatically treat that water. So we're not quite there yet. We're still working on that monitoring system that works with low flows. Because if you remember the pump station, we're pumping a lot for 6 months. And then for 6 months, we're not. Like right now, we're utilizing other resources. So we're still working on that. But that's the good news. The bad news is we're looking at an automation system, which part of this addresses the automation for the pump station and all, but the full automation of all of our systems, water and sewer, is going to be about $200,000, which does include the portion within number 8, which is about 30,000. But so unfortunately, we're going to have another big project on our CIP list next year to finish the complete automation, all new automation of our wastewater and sewer systems. Very important projects. It gets us into the 21st century, and unfortunately, it's going to be expensive, but very necessary. The Madison Street project is from 4th to 3rd, creating the right turn lane on Madison. And what that does is trigger the development of the block that the Shell station is on. That's going to move forward, but it won't be until late fiscal year next year if that happens. Could slop into the late summer of next year. But that is, I'm going to try and get that done next fiscal year, because a lot of other development is waiting on that to happen. So we don't want to hold that up. The digital reader board is something that's been on and off our list for 7, 8 years. I don't know. But still have to go through the planning commission on that. And when we have a reason to meet as a planning commission, we'll again put that before the council and try and get the CUP for a new reader board. But that's not going to happen this fiscal year. Parks improvements is a kind of a catch-all to spend what little SDCs we have on various things. We'll likely have a similar project next year for park improvements. But we've completed the Abigail Scott Dunaway development, as well as the Vets Park design. Some real important projects there. Number 13, what we have going on this one is we need to move forward on the Madison Street pedestrian crossing. This is a lighted crossing, which would be on South Madison. For council members that have been here, you probably recall we put in a crosswalk there. It was kind of a temporary thing, see how it is. PGE put in a light for us, we trimmed the trees. It's not ideal. And now that we know more about it and all, what we'd like to do is move forward on getting this crosswalk installed sooner than later. It'll be a lighted pedestrian button activated across South Madison at Water Street. You might have noticed we moved the digital reader sign from 5th and Madison down to the railroad tracks to slow people down as they're leaving town, and it has had a wonderful effect. I've heard from people that live there and says, wow, what a difference. It's tough to enforce speeding there as people are leaving town. And that has helped a lot. And we'll move that sign again once we get that lighted crosswalk in. It'll move closer to the crosswalk, but this is a real wonderful improvement. It's what we've been working toward. The other one that's going to come behind this would be a button activated crossing on Bridge Street across 3rd. And we can't start on that basically until ODOT's done and with their project, but that would be the next intersection where we would be looking at putting in a button activated crosswalk there. The last couple here, the water main relocation, that's most of the night work from here through probably mid-March. They're going to finish about mid-March, which is about a month ahead of where their deadline was to get the work done by ODOT. So that's proceeding real nicely. They're ahead of schedule, and we've been producing some notices to downtown folks and all, and that's been working really good. Not to be confused with the ODOT project to rebuild the highway, which is going to be late this summer. This has nothing to do with that project. Number 15 is just relocating our water line and services. It's not rebuilding the road. And then number 16 is our new proposed project before you tonight. But before we leave that, I did want to mention that we had an email I talked to you about from a lady that had a question about traffic signals. That's what it was. Right. And a lady was asking, well, we need a traffic signal. Why don't you just put in a traffic signal? Well, that would be nice. Yes. But the project that we're doing right now and the project that ODOT will be doing to rebuild 99 here later this summer, it is not a modernization project. It is a preservation project. It's a maintenance project. They don't increase vehicle capacity at all. It's safety, it's roadbed, it's sidewalks. It's an entirely different pot of money and approval system than it would be for modernization or upgrades for vehicle traffic capacity. So I think the lady was understanding, but there's not going to be any traffic signals anytime soon.
I think it's important when we discussed this earlier in the week, I made this comment and I'll bring it up to council because I think it's one of those things that'd be important for us to kind of all be on the same page on. The community wants a traffic light. I've never talked to anybody that doesn't say that Lafayette needs a traffic light. So people are gonna ask about it when they see this summer, when ODOT's tearing up the road, everybody's gonna say, well, now's the perfect time to put in that light. We need to let them know, we tried, they said no, okay, on this project. Okay, so there was an attempt made to include that in the project, and ODOT wanted nothing to do with it, which doesn't mean that we can't get one in the future, but it's a long, complicated process working with ODOT to get a light out there. So when people ask, just tell them, we're working on it. We tried to get it into this plan. ODOT said no, but we're going to continue pursuing that in the future. Okay, does that sound, gives you a way to respond when people ask you about that? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Right, thanks, Your Honor. So, okay, back to the action item at hand, amending the CIP to begin our water meter replacement project. Are there any other questions council might have on that?
Yeah. Why is the number 40,000?
Well, it's just it's enough to get us what we need for phase 1 in Meadowbrook, provide us about an extra 50 meters to have on hand for some replacements as well as all new construction. And I just didn't want to bite off more than I could chew right now. It's a good means of starting. We've got some extra money in there in case we run into something or we want to buy a few more meters, maybe. But the quote that you have attached is one that we received last year, and they're honoring that. The price will not change. There's about $11,000 of software in the quote that's provided once you basically commit to that standard. So it's kind of a promotional bid, but we need to have a little bit extra in there in case things come up. So 40,000 was a good number to pull from other projects for now and get us started this fiscal year.
Yeah, Preston, I'm sorry, I didn't phrase my question very well. I apologize. I guess my question is kind of filling in that gap between the quote and 40,000. What kind of stuff could come up that would cause, that cushion money essentially to be, nearly doubling the quote?
Well, it could be that our crew has the time between now and June 30th and says, let's replace some more meters. So we buy another 50 meters maybe and get those done this fiscal year. And if it's a great fill-in project. Right now, they don't have any time to spare, but come April, May, June, possibly. And if it doesn't get spent, that's fine too, because it'll be there next year, come July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the following amend capital improvement project for fiscal year 2021, reallocating monies and approving a new project number 16, water meter replacements phase 1, confirm the Mueller meter standard for future water meters in the city, and authorize the purchase of 115 meters and software from Consolidated Supply Company in the amount of $22,655.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Who seconded?
I think Kayla, did you second?
Was that Kayla?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was me.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Council. Could I just mention one other thing? Some of these projects that were being pushed off, we would have done them this year. but you know how our budget got blown out of the water by the ODOT project and things. But it was still way too much than we could possibly get done. We always try, but we've had a lot of things come up this year. Wow. Not just on our CIP, everything. So it's been a lot of work to get this done, and moving some of these back are not only a budgetary thing, but just necessity. We can't do it all at once.
Hey, Preston, thanks for your rundown of all these. You did mention going through these projects, the automation for the water and sewer system that's going to be coming up. One thing that I would appreciate seeing with either that proposal or plan would be, understanding kind of incrementally how much time your staff spends every week or whatever, or I don't care if it's per month or year or whatever, but just kind of how much time that is and a payoff of after that, it's paid for itself and we're gaining money on it or whatever, to understand those details can really help us see in perspective, hey, we got to do this sooner. This is the right way to, make our city more effective and efficient.
Well, you mentioned the automated project, and I expect to be bringing that to you next month, that contract from TAG, which is our consulting firm that we have a master agreement with. That is such a detail-oriented thing. I can tell you that our staff has already put into that probably 50 hours. You add in the consultant times, we're probably well over 100 hours. That's not typical for a lot that's on our CIP, because once it's designed, then it becomes project management. That city engineer has their role. It's mostly my office, the admin that administers the contracts at that point. And it's your staff that, puts all the budgeting, all the direction, puts it in the budget, the multi-year planning, all of that stuff. So you'll have to maybe remind me to do that a little bit in the future, Jim, but we'll do that. I'll do that the best we can. And realizing that this automated project is really, it's an anomaly. It's not your typical capital project. But we can get into that and explain that a little better next month, because I think that's when you'll be looking at that new contract to complete the automation.
Okay,
thanks, Preston.
Moving to item 10A, on page 24, increasing the PGE franchise fee. Preston?
Sure, Honor. As I mentioned in the staff report, this is a holdover item. Council discussed it last July, was it? And then decided at that time not to move forward on it and instead bring it back in February of this year. And the reason why it came up last July is because we were on the verge of a renewal, a 5-year renewal of the franchise. And at that time, there wasn't anything to address from an operational standpoint. So the only question really with the franchise renewal might be, do you want to raise the franchise fee? And council is allowed, can raise that franchise fee at any time. That's the way it is in the franchise now. If you want to raise that, you can just determine to do that. It doesn't have to be done tonight. It can be done anytime. But you'll also know probably I've got a stack recommendation of none in there. That's because not that we couldn't use the money in the general fund, but I know council's concerned with this being passed on to the consumers here in the city, and that's entirely a valid concern. That's the same reason why we didn't want to raise utility rates last year. So I just want to impart on council that you can do this anytime you need. And if you're squeamish about rates on this, what you really need to be thinking about is our utility rates. And that'll become very apparent as I present the recommended budget for next year. We have to keep up on our utility rates. And it's very important to do that. And I can explain how we can easily get behind if we don't. A lot of cities, they kick the can down the road and then they got a big problem. Look at what Carlton did here just a few years ago. They never raised their rates at all. And then they had an exponential increase in rates for several years to make necessary improvements. We've done a ton of water improvements. And we've done it without big rate increases.
Preston,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but can we stay on topic with the PG?
You bet.
We're 2.5 hours in and still have.
Sorry.
Can I make a recommendation, Preston? If we're gonna be assessing the potential increase in utility bills here soon, I recommend that we just put this on hold, at least until that's done. Because I personally won't vote in favor of this with the pandemic right now and the fact that the utility bills are probably gonna go up.
I concur with Kayla. I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, I think,
I also agree.
okay,
Caleb.
okay. Yeah, okay, so we have general consensus amongst the council to postpone any action on this to the future.
Right on. Okay.
All right, let's move to 10C. Page 27. And let's try to
You want me to highlight the changes?
Yeah,
Real fast.
yeah, you bet.
The governor did not change our risk level. We're still in extreme risk this week. That gets evaluated every 2 weeks. So that evaluation was announced on Tuesday. We're still in the extreme risk category. So although there's some changes with schools and sports and stuff, it doesn't affect us as far as gatherings or opening up facilities. I added a new section here on staff vaccinations to kind of give you an update about our law enforcement and fire are all getting their first shots done, and now they're scheduled for their second. And other than that, there's not any changes except council giving direction on a continuation of the restaurant relief program.
Okay, we were taking that on a month-by-month basis. So is everybody in agreement that we will continue this program through the end of March?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, how many people took advantage of that last month?
Not many, and I didn't have good numbers when I put this together, so I didn't include the breakdown by month. I think in January it was like between 15 and 20.
I assume it's probably down right now because they can't eat inside, so not many people are going down eating.
Right. All right.
Is this something we could, throw into the water bills that go out and just remind people of?
We can include something on the water bill. We've had a blurb on it, I think, in the newsletter almost every month.
Yeah.
But we can look at the water bill too. Yes.
Okay, so we'll extend that through the end of next month, and we'll revisit that again in the March meeting. Okay, let's move on then to department reports. Public Works, anything we need to talk about there? Any questions or concerns about the Public Works report? Page 29. Nope. Good. Okay. Anything from fire? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was slow on the space bar here. Chief did mention a meeting that he attended regarding the New Carlton, or excuse me, the study that we got in terms of merging or creating a larger district out of a combined area. And I attended the same one, so I couldn't decide if I just mention it now or during council reports, but I figured I'd just throw it out there now. It was a great meeting last week. Chief kind of highlighted what the discussions were, and then that'll continue on with another 3-day long meeting mid-March, and probably more to follow.
Very cool. Thank you, Christine.
If I can, Your Honor, to tag on that, the chief wanted me to mention, he had a board meeting Tuesday night. They are all set to go ahead with our hiring of a training officer, and very good discussion. And so we are going to be advertising for our training officer next week.
Awesome.
By the end of March, we'll have an assessment day set aside for a professional, a hiring panel, as well as the volunteers. All the candidates will be worked through there, and then the top 2 or 3 candidates would be recommended for final interview. And so tonight, I'd like to get a council volunteer to serve on that hiring panel. And Christine is all things fire.
I assumed it would be Christine.
But it would be a 1-day, almost a full day assessment during the week, which we'll know about ahead of time, a good 2-3 weeks. That would be the commitment.
I can make that happen. Perfect.
Thank you, Christine.
Is that okay then? We'll have Christine. Okay. Yep. Thank you, Christine.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, administration.
Okay, Your Honor, just 2 things. I need to commit on the 2 budget committee hearing dates. We were talking about the last 2 Mondays in April 19th and April 26th. Are those good dates for council? We want to lock into those 2 dates.
What dates?
That's Monday, April 19th and Monday, April 26th.
They'll be at 6:30.
Yeah, they'll be at 6:30, yes.
I should be able to make that work.
Is that okay with council's calendars? And
The 26th does not work for me. I will be out of town.
Wait, will this be held remotely?
right now, that's what we're planning, yes. With the full budget committee, yes, yes.
I know in the past we've planned 2, maybe even 3 Mondays. I don't know if we've ever actually hit the 3rd Monday. If that happens, I will be out of town Monday the 3rd. However, I'm not able to vote on the budget, so don't necessarily plan around my schedule.
Yeah. Well, May 3rd is another good date that fits in with everything in case there is a 3rd meeting. But we could split the 2 up a little bit.
Well, I think we're all right. If we only have one counselor that has one conflict, I think we're good to go.
That's the consensus then. We'll lock.
Is that okay, Sheila?
Yeah, I'm okay. If you're okay with me missing that one, just giving me notice now that I cannot make that one. I will be out of town and Zoom will not be possible.
Yeah, that's fine. Not a huge deal.
Okay.
Will we be voting on the April 26th if we're ready?
That would be the plan. Yeah.
Okay, because we'd be down 2 votes then, right? If Christine's abstaining.
Correct. I cannot vote.
The budget committee will have the full budget committee, correct?
Right. The other 7 lay members. So it's a 14-member committee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so one missing person is not a huge deal.
Right. And
Okay.
so on those lines, I also want to mention, in case I haven't to the new members already, but if you've got projects, if you've got budget impact things, I need to know those. I need to know those really by the end of this month. March and April are my busiest time of year, trying to do everything plus get all the budget together. It's a huge effort. And to make adjustments at the April meetings, sometimes we do, but big adjustments, we'll need another meeting to do that. It's very difficult to make accommodations at the end for something that spans multiple budgets. So please let me know. I know some of you already have as far as projects and everything, but if you got something on mind, let me know here if it's possible by the end of this month.
So Preston, is that an invitation to everyone, all citizens, or would you rather that the citizens contact us counselors and filter that through you or to you?
Well, the part of the budget process is hearings, to hear from the citizens. And so I present the budget on the 19th. We generally have that available a week in advance. People can comment, and then we actually have formal hearings on the budget and deliberations and decisions that are made on the 26th. So there's opportunity for public comment. If you hear things, great, ahead of time. Once in a while, I get things too mentioned to me. The crosswalk on Madison is a prime example of community members saying, "Hey, we got a problem here. We need safety. There's kids trying to cross," and so we stuck that in the budget. And now next year we're going to implement that. Projects in the budget can come from many sources, but now's the time. I need to know this month where it all is.
So April 19 and 26.
Yes.
Those will work. Okay. You had two things. Was there another thing?
The other thing was possible dedication of the Abigail Scott Dunaway Park in next month. It all kind of depends on the travel plans of Laird family members, but so we'll schedule accordingly. It would be a small affair of folks at the park. Council would all be invited to that. So it's going to be great and a special event. And so that's hopefully coming at us here in the next month or two. And that's all I have, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Any committee reports? Any counselor reports? And I have no report this month. So that brings us to our executive session. The Lafayette City Council will now meet in executive session under ORS 192.6602I to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the city administrator of the city of Lafayette. No formal decision will be made in executive session. For those watching the meeting via the YouTube stream, this will end the live streamed portion of the meeting. The members of the public attending via Zoom are asked to leave the meeting, please. At the close of the executive session, the council will return only to open the session and adjourn the meeting. The YouTube live stream will not be restarted.